Hey, good Holy Saturday to you. Today is the last of the daily devotions that we've walked through together for Holy Week this week. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Quick sidebar real fast before we get started on today's devotional. I just want to say a thank you to all of Mountain View's worship team that came out and did the Good Friday worship streaming service last night. And for those of you who tuned in, and also a huge thank you to Pastor Rachel and her team for handing out the Easter bags that we made up for the families in the area of the church that usually come out for the Easter egg hunt that we do every year. I was told it went off like a rousing success. There's lines of cars all down the road, so much so that the cops got called on us. So good, bad, not exactly sure, but thank you regardless. So today is Holy Saturday. Today is a day that we historically and traditionally, we turn our minds to what the disciples of Jesus Christ were experiencing on the day after his crucifixion. So the scripture I want to read for you today is out of Matthew chapter 27, 57 through 66. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled the great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there sitting opposite the tomb. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember how that impostor said, while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore, order the tomb to be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people he has risen from the dead, and that last fraud will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go make it as secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. I think a few things that come to my mind when I'm reading this passage of Scripture is first and foremost, I turn my eyes to Joseph of Arimathea. He was an influential man. The Bible even calls him a wealthy man that was in the Jewish nation, that was revered by the Jews, but also by the Romans. That this guy had to have a lot of influence and a lot of pull if he could come before Pilate and ask for the body of Jesus. And I love that the word specifies that he was also a disciple of Jesus. I want us to think today about what that man was going through. Jewish custom said that crucified bodies had to be buried by nightfall of the day that they died. So this man, in his grief, went to Pilate and quickly made the decision that he was going to bury the body of Jesus into a tomb that he had set aside for himself, a rich man's tomb that a homeless carpenter had no business being in. And I just want to think about the mindset that Joseph of Arimathea must have had, that he was just as crushed and disappointed as all of the disciples of Jesus right now. The Bible doesn't tell us that there was a whole lot of them, which I always found surprising, but I believe the Word. The Word doesn't tell us that there was a group of his disciples saying, "Wait, the third day's coming, the third day's coming, the third day's coming, just wait." They all seem to be just crushed. And here was Joseph of Arimathea taking the body of what was, up until the day before, his hope, his hope for the future, his Lord, his perceived Messiah. And he takes the body off of the cross and treats it with respect, and wraps it in a clean linen cloth and places it in his own tomb that he set aside for his own use. And I want to just look at that and ask us, do we treat the things of God with respect even when God disappoints us? Do we run away and throw a childish temper tantrum like a 3-year-old brat when God doesn't do the things that we want him to do? Or do we hold fast, even in brokenness, even in disappointment, and say, "God, I'm going to behave rightly. I'm going to behave in a mature fashion"? Or do we shake our fists at heaven and say, "Forget it all"? Now listen, I want you to know that I've been on both sides of the answer to that question. So I'm not asking it to condemn those of us who have shaken our fists. I'm just saying maybe address it. Maybe address that when God lets you down, it's too much for you to bear. Or do we wait and trust And the other thing I want to do is point our focus at the other disciples. I read for you the passage where the chief priests and the Pharisees actually went to Pilate and they said, we think that these people are just crazy enough that they're going to take the body of Jesus and they're going to perform this ruse on all of society and say, look, his body's gone, he's risen, and therefore deceive everybody. They were so crushed that the Bible does not note that that was anywhere near in the plans or even close to taking place. They were hiding. They were crushed and disappointed and licking their own wounds. And I've been there too. How about you? But what I want to point to is the fact that even when we're disappointed, even when our hopes for the future seem to be dashed, even when we're hiding away because everything we thought God was going to do isn't happening, Sunday is still on its way. On this day, on the day in between the crucifixion and the resurrection that we look to on this Holy Saturday, the disciples were crushed, but the sun was going to rise the next day. The sun is going to rise on your next day. And God still, like then, now loves to surprise His faithful. Even if you've shaken your fist at the heaven, even if you've cursed God's name and said, I can't believe you've done things in a way that I wouldn't have approved, God still rose. He still went to His disciples and said, see, He went to a doubting Thomas and said, why don't you believe? Come here, son, I'm going to give you what you need. Thomas told the other disciples, I'm not going to believe unless I can stick my fingers in the nail prints on his hands. And Jesus, because He loved Thomas like He loves you, says, here I am. Listen, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. On everything that you're discouraged about, every promise that you're still waiting for, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. And our God is still in the business of resurrecting dead things. God bless you guys. Tomorrow's Easter. Let's run into it. Have a good rest of your Saturday.